All right, let's dive into a rapid-fire tour of 5 literary giants from the Renaissance. If you're studying for an exam or you're just curious, this is your essential crash course on the writers who didn't just define their era, but also shaped ours. So first, we've got to set the scene. The Renaissance, it literally means rebirth, kicked off in Italian cities like Florence. And look, it was way more than just incredible art. It was a complete revolution in how people saw the world, themselves, and of course, storytelling. This absolute explosion of creativity is the world where all our writers today come from. So, here's our game plan. We're going to start in the busy streets of London with Thomas Dekker. Then we'll see how Arthur Golding brought ancient myths to England. From there, we're hopping over to Italy to get our heads around Machiavelli. Then we'll dive into the dark world of Cyril Tourneur's tragedies. And finally, we'll head to Spain to meet the guy who basically invented the modern novel, Cervantes. And don't worry, we'll wrap it all up with a super handy cheat sheet. Let's get into it. Okay, our first stop is Elizabethan England with Thomas Dekker. Now, you have to remember, a lot of writers back then were focused on epic stories about kings and queens. But Dekker, he was fascinated by the city of London itself, the real people living, working, and dreaming there every single day. And his most famous play is The Shoemaker's Holiday. I mean, the title alone tells you so much, right? This isn't about a prince or some great general. It's about a regular craftsman, a shoemaker, and how he makes his way in the world using his wit and a lot of hard work. And this is what made Dekker a real game changer. In a time when literature was all about aristocratic heroes, he put the loud, messy, authentic life of London's working class right on center stage. He actually cared about their struggles and celebrated their wins. His huge contribution was making the common person the hero of the story. Okay, so we've walked the streets of London. Now let's find out how the ancient classical world got unlocked for English writers. Our next guy is Arthur Golding, and I bet you've come across his work, even if you don't recognize his name. So, here's the thing about Golding. His masterpiece wasn't something he wrote from scratch. It was a translation. He took this massive, epic Latin poem, Ovid's Metamorphoses, which is basically a giant collection of Greek and Roman myths, and he made it available in English for the very first time. And the impact of this was just enormous. Before Golding, English poets didn't really have easy access to these foundational stories. Afterwards, they had a treasure chest. His translation became the go-to source for mythology, and you know who its most famous reader was? William Shakespeare. Yeah, from A Midsummer Night's Dream to Romeo and Juliet, when Shakespeare drops a mythological reference, he's getting it straight from Golding. So if you're going to remember just one thing for your exam, make it this. Golding was the man who gave Ovid to Shakespeare. It's as simple and as important as that. All right, let's travel back to the heart of the Renaissance, to Italy, to talk about a man whose name is now basically shorthand for cunning and power politics, Niccolo Machiavelli. Machiavelli was a statesman in Florence, and he literally wrote the book on how to get and keep power. It's called The Prince. He's seen as the father of modern political science because he wasn't writing about how politics should be, all noble and moral. He was writing about how it actually works. His ideas were so shocking and so powerful that they actually created a brand new type of character on the English stage, the Machiavellian villain. Think about Shakespeare's Richard III or Iago. These are those characters who are just ruthlessly ambitious, they manipulate everyone around them, and they truly believe that morality is for the weak. They are the literary children of Machiavelli. This quote nails the whole philosophy of the Machiavel. For these characters, any action, no matter how cruel or immoral it is totally fine as long as it helps them get what they want. It's a pretty chilling idea, but it makes for some incredible drama. So your memory line for Machiavelli? He is the ultimate philosopher of power. Okay, from the cold logic of power, we are now going to descend into pure darkness. Let's talk about Cyril Tourneur and the grim, violent world of the Jacobean revenge tragedy. Tourneur is tied to 2 really key plays in this genre, the Atheist tragedy and the even more famous one, the Revenger's tragedy. Oh, and here's a little bonus fact for you. Some scholars actually think the Revenger's tragedy was written by another playwright, Thomas Middleton. The debate is still on. The style of these plays is just unmistakable. It is dark, it's cynical, and it's absolutely obsessed with moral decay and corruption. The plots are all about these bloody, complicated plans for revenge. This really taps into the anxieties of the Jacobean era. That's the period right after Queen Elizabeth's Golden Age, which was often seen as a time of pessimism and decay. Okay, for our final author, we are heading to Spain to meet a contemporary of Shakespeare's. In fact, they both died in the same month of the same year. This is the writer who would invent a whole new way to tell a story, Miguel de Cervantes. Cervantes' masterpiece, Don Quixote, is a giant of world literature. So why is it so important? Well, it's widely considered to be the very first modern novel. It's all about a nobleman who reads so many of these old-fashioned chivalry books that he loses his grip on reality a little bit and decides to become a knight himself. The absolute genius of the book is in the dynamic between its two main characters. On one hand, you have Don Quixote, the ultimate idealist, a dreamer who sees giants where there are only windmills. And on the other hand, you have his squire, Sancho Panza, who is a total realist. He just sees the world for what it is. This incredible clash between fantasy and reality is what makes the novel so funny and so deeply insightful about what it means to be human. So, the single most important thing to remember about Cervantes is this. He is the father of the modern novel. He created the blueprint for long-form, character-driven storytelling that writers are still using today. All right, we have covered a whole lot of ground. So now it's time to pull it all together with your final review, the all-important exam cheat sheet. This right here is your ultimate takeaway. Let's lock it in. Dekker gave us the real-life Londoner. Golden gave Shakespeare his myths. Machiavelli gave us the power-hungry villain. Tourneur perfected dark, bloody revenge. And Cervantes gave us the modern novel. 5 authors, 5 massive contributions to literature, all in one place. And that brings us to one last question for you. From Don Quixote, the dreamer, to the Machiavellian villain, these character types are still everywhere, in our movies, our TV shows, our books. So which of these Renaissance figures do you think has left the biggest mark on the stories we're all still telling today? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.